The Wild Man of Orford. The year was 1167, and near the formidable Orford Castle in Suffolk, England, a group of fishermen hauled in something far from ordinary. Tangled in their nets was a man, naked and feral, covered head to toe in hair. This strange wild man was swiftly brought back and imprisoned in the castle, where his fate diverges depending on the source. Some say he was merely questioned. Others claim he was beaten over several months. English chronicler Ralph of Coggeshall detailed the wild man's appearance in a book known as the Chronicon Anglicanum. In it, he notes that, quote, the hair of his head seemed torn and rubbed, but he had a bushy beard and was shaggy about the breast. This description fueled speculation, with some sources suggesting the wild man was actually a merman. However, all accounts agreed on his feral nature and his silence. He never uttered a word. In his writings, Ralph of Coggeshall noted the wild man's peculiar diet. He consumed raw meat, particularly fish, squeezing the juices from the flesh before devouring it. He preferred this liquid sustenance over water, a behavior that only added to his mystique. Ralph pondered over the wild man's origins, writing, quote, as to whether this was a mortal man, or some fish pretending human shape, or was an evil spirit hiding in the body of a drowned man, it's not possible to be precise. After months of captivity, the wild man was allowed some freedom to exercise in a section of the sea cordoned off by nets. Yet, his restless nature prevailed. After 6 months, he escaped by swimming under the nets, vanishing from historical records forever. The Wild Man of Orford was not an isolated case. Tales of wild men, said to dwell in the woods and mountains of England, proliferated during this era and spread throughout Europe. These creatures were often described as being completely covered in hair, a trait some attributed to being abandoned in the wild as infants or raised by wild animals. In England, particularly around Orford, images of wild men frequently adorn baptismal fonts and other religious artifacts from the 12th century. These depictions serve as reminders of the legends surrounding the Wild Man of Orford, a local myth that persists to this day, bridging the past with the present and fueling our fascination with the unknown. The Airship People. In the twilight of the 19th century, as America teetered on the brink of a new era, a peculiar phenomenon swept across the nation: mass sightings of airships captained by mysterious pilots. It was the winter of 1896 when the first reports emerged from Sacramento, California, of strange lights dancing across the night sky. What began as a localized curiosity soon burgeoned into a nationwide obsession, as thousands of Americans claimed to witness what would come to be known as the Great Airship Wave. Notably, these sightings occurred years before the Wright brothers' historic flight at Kitty Hawk, and even before the first flights of a Zeppelin. Witnesses described craft that defied the limits of contemporary technology, cigar-shaped vessels that soared effortlessly through the heavens, piloted by mysterious figures whose origins sparked fervent speculation. The phenomenon peaked in the spring of 1897, as reports flooded in from across the Midwest. In an era marked by rapid technological advancement, the idea of a secret inventor testing a revolutionary flying machine seemed plausible to many. Consider the account of Colonel H.G. Shaw, who claimed a close encounter near Stockton, California. Shaw described a landed craft of metallic construction, some 150 feet in length, crewed by slender, towering beings who attempted to abduct him. This incredible tale, published in the Stockton Daily Mail, may well represent one of the earliest recorded instances of alleged extraterrestrial abduction in American folklore. As the sightings increased, so too did the theories. Some believed that the airships were the vanguard of a Martian invasion, while others insisted they were the work of a reclusive genius, not yet ready to unveil his creation to the world. The latter theory gained traction when George D. Collins, a young San Francisco attorney, came forward claiming to represent the airship's inventor. Collins' assertions, however, soon crumbled under scrutiny, leaving the mystery intact. The reports of airship pilots varied wildly in their details. Some witnesses claimed to have conversed with the pilots, who offered explanations ranging from the mundane to the absurd. In Arkansas, a former state senator allegedly encountered an airship captain who declared his intention to use a Hotchkiss gun against Spanish forces in Cuba. Another account from Texas described a crew who claimed to be descendants of the lost tribes of Israel, having learned English from a 16th century Arctic expedition. By the summer of 1897, the great airship wave had largely subsided, leaving behind a transformed cultural landscape. The episode served as a prelude to the modern UFO era, foreshadowing the mass sightings and theories that would come to define 20th century ufology. Gil Perez. Science fiction is full of stories about teleportation, fantastical journeys that defy the constraints of time and space. Yet occasionally, such narratives surface in the historical record, hinting at the possibility of their truth. One such story is that of Gil Perez, a Spanish soldier stationed in the Philippines in 1593, who purportedly experienced an extraordinary event that remains unexplained to this day. On a tense October night in Manila, Perez was on guard duty outside the governor's palace. The atmosphere was fraught with anxiety. Just the night before, Governor Gomez Perez Dasmariñas had been assassinated by Chinese pirates, throwing the city into chaos. Perez, fatigued yet vigilant, succumbed to a momentary lapse and fell asleep. When Perez awoke, he was no longer in Manila. To his astonishment, he found himself in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by strangers. Disoriented, he wandered, until he encountered another group of soldiers who informed him that he was in Mexico City, thousands of miles from where he had stood mere seconds ago. Perez, bewildered, asserted his identity as a Spanish soldier stationed in the Philippines and had no recollection of how he arrived in Mexico. The journey, he knew, would have taken 2 months by any known means. His claims were met with skepticism, and the local authorities, finding his story implausible, arrested him on suspicion of desertion and locked him in a cell. Perez, curiously unperturbed, made no significant effort to contest his imprisonment. Weeks passed, and news from Manila eventually reached Mexico City. Governor Dasmariñas had indeed been assassinated, just as Perez had claimed. Among the arriving Spanish envoys were guards who recognized Perez, corroborating his story. Perez was subsequently released and returned to Manila with his compatriots. Over the centuries, many have attempted to rationalize Perez's tale. Some suggest he was a victim of a genuine act of teleportation or alien intervention. Skeptics, however, offer a more grounded explanation. Perez may have experienced a fugue state, a rare dissociative disorder often triggered by severe psychological trauma. In such a state, individuals can travel long distances and perform complex activities while remaining unaware of their actions. The traumatic events surrounding the governor's assassination could have precipitated such a reaction in Perez, causing him to travel to Mexico unconsciously. The Pseudo Neros. On the night of June 9th, 68 AD, the Roman Emperor Nero heard the ominous sound of horses thundering towards his villa. With his enemies closing in, he chose to end his life, thus concluding a 14-year reign and marking the end of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. Yet, curiously, this was not the last the world would hear of him. In the year that followed, impostors began to mysteriously emerge, each claiming to be the resurrected emperor. These pseudo-Neros stirred unrest and threatened the very stability of the empire. While 3 documented impostors are known to history, it's believed that there were others whose fates remain unaccounted for. Some Romans clung to the belief that Nero had faked his death, evading his foes to plot his return. The appearance of these pseudo-Neros fueled legends of his impending revenge, a specter haunting those who had driven him to his death. The first impostor surfaced in what is now Greece. According to the historian Tacitus, he was an opportunistic slave from Pontus, modern-day Turkey. This man gathered a band of army deserters and set sail, only to be caught in a storm that stranded them on a Greek island. There, they established a piracy base. By invoking Nero's name, he amassed an impressive following, but was eventually hunted down and killed by Nero's successor, Galba. A decade later, a second impostor emerged, a Roman rebel named Terentius Maximus. Maximus bore a striking resemblance to Nero and used his likeness to rally significant forces. His ruse, however, ended in a death sentence for impersonating the deceased emperor. 10 more years passed before the third impostor appeared. Though details are sparse, it is known that he garnered the support of the Parthians, who had killed the previous pseudo-Nero. His actions nearly escalated into war. With their audacious claims and consequential actions, these impostors highlighted the enduring influence of Nero's reign and the instability that followed his demise. the specter of Nero, real or imagined, continued to haunt the empire long after his death. Jerome of Sandy Cove. On the morning of September 8, 1863, 8-year-old Collie Albright was playing along the beach of Sandy Cove in eastern Canada when he stumbled upon a figure lying on the sand. The man, seemingly in his 30s, had both of his legs cut above the knees, leaving only bandaged stumps. The Albright family took the man back to their home. He could utter only one word that sounded like Jerome. There, they nursed him back to health. Examinations revealed that a skilled surgeon had performed Jerome's amputations, though his wounds were still healing. His Mediterranean appearance and soft hands suggested he was not accustomed to manual labor. Jerome's presence quickly became a curiosity among the locals. Visitors flocked to the Albright home, eager to discern his origins and language. Attempts to communicate in French, Latin, Italian, and Spanish proved futile. Jerome either could not or would not speak these languages. His temper was short, and he often growled at those who came to see him. The Albrights, unable to support him alone, passed Jerome from house to house. Eventually, he received a stipend of $2 a week and was sent to live with an experienced linguist. Despite the linguist's efforts, Jerome remained silent. Nevertheless, the family grew fond of him, and he stayed with them for 7 more years. Jerome died in 1912, living with a family that treated him as both a curiosity and an asset, charging visitors to meet him. His mysterious origins spurred various theories. Some speculated that he was a deserter, punished by amputation, or a high-born heir cast away for financial gain. Others suggested he suffered a brain injury, possibly from drowning, which could explain his inability to communicate. In 2008, a plausible explanation emerged from governmental records. Across the bay from Sandy Cove was a settlement where a young foreigner named Gamby had fallen through the ice and developed gangrene. His legs were amputated, and he became a burden to the locals, who paid a passing ship to take him away. The boat might have left Gamby on the far side of the bay, where Collie Albright discovered him. While the tale of Gamby aligns with Jerome's story, the truth remains a mystery. Who do you think the Wild Man of Orford was? Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching Dark 5. Like and subscribe to continue exploring the greatest mysteries of this world and beyond.